up emotions. Megrahi remains the only person to have been convicted of involvement in the bombing of Pan Am Flight 103 over Lockerbie in 1988, an outrage which killed a total of 270 people. Megrahi's freedom was granted by the devolved authorities in Scotland on compassionate grounds, on the basis that he had been diagnosed with terminal cancer. Publicly, the government of Prime Minister Gordon Brown in London kept its distance, insisting that any criticism of the release should be directed at the Scottish. But the new review reveals that privately, the policy of the London government had fundamentally changed.
They were doing that for geopolitical, for economic reasons. And yet, a year later, when the Scottish government, under due process of Scots law, did release Mr Megrahi, then we were roundly attacked by the Labour Party in Scotland, viciously attacked, and Gordon Brown was absolutely silent. I haven't seen a more case of more organised hypocrisy in my political lifetime.
On October the 8th, 2008, the UK government minister Bill Rammell met his Libyan counterpart, Abdulati Al-Obidi. On October the 17th, Mr Rammell followed it up with a letter, and the two men met again on November 17th. On December the 1st, the British ambassador gave further procedural advice to the Libyans. And at a third meeting in February of 2009, Mr Rammell assured the Libyans that the UK did not want Megrahi to die in a British jail. Just 3 months later, the Libyans requested Megrahi's release. On a visit to Washington last July, the British Prime Minister David Cameron admitted that he would have preferred Megrahi to stay in prison. And when Mr Cameron met with the US Secretary of State at a conference in Munich just last weekend, the pair issued a joint statement strongly agreeing that the release of the Lockerbie bomber had been a mistake. But crucially, although the previous UK administration had changed its stance on Libya, the review concludes there was no improper lobbying of the Scottish authorities by London, nor did the oil company BP influence the Megrahi case. It is a small consolation from a very murky affair. Paul Brennan, Al Jazeera, London.
Well, I'll be back with more from Europe a little later in the programme. Now, though, let's go back to Doha. Thank you, Barbara. People living in a disputed region on the Thai-Cambodian border have been forced to flee a fourth day of fighting between troops from the two countries. We'll have that story coming up. And bushfires rage across Western Australia. We report on the destruction of homes across a vast area.
What's at the front line of global media?
This has been reported worldwide with a major media angle to it.
Comparing news and challenging views. The Listening Post, at this time on Al Jazeera.
How many festivals around the world can offer visitors the opportunity to watch cyclists push themselves to the limit, to taste delicious traditional Omani cuisine, to be inspired by cutting-edge Arabic fashion, to experience the thrill of the fastest sailing competition, or to simply enjoy traditional Omani hospitality? Whatever you choose to do, the whole family will be inspired by an event rich in experiences. The Muscat Festival. It's here, January 27th to February 24th.
Qatar Tourism Authority invites you to the 8th Doha Jewellery and Watches Exhibition from the 15th to the 20th of February 2011 at the Doha Exhibition Centre. Sponsored by Qatar National Bank and Qatar Airways.
Welcome back. Our top story on Al Jazeera. Thousands of protesters are still on the streets of Cairo and other Egyptian cities calling for the end of Hosni Mubarak's reign. But Egyptian state TV has shown the president meeting members of his administration. His new cabinet has held its first full meeting since the beginning of the uprising. Hosni Mubarak is showing no signs of standing now. His power base is built on the support of a wealthy and influential elite. Jackie Rowland has been finding out how that section of the population is feeling about the current unrest.
Welcome to the Jazeera Club, an oasis of calm amid the turmoil of Egyptian politics. Just a few long strokes from the demonstrations on Tahrir Square, you can have a round of golf and catch up with your well-heeled friends. If it weren't for the military helicopter hovering overhead, you could almost forget that the army is on the streets.
The members of this club have prospered during the years of Hosni Mubarak, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they support him. In fact, we found the same debates and disagreements on the terraces and the tennis courts here as you find on the streets around Tahrir Square.
This is the elite of Cairo society, bankers and businessmen, critics of the president and die-hard supporters. But what they all share is a fear of instability.
We are pro-Mubarak because he gave us stability and he gave us peace during his government. And we are for him, definitely.
He's a brave man. He is a father of all of us. He is not a crazy man. He's a good man. I love him.
He don't understand that everyone around him is corrupted. He don't understand that. And if he understands that and he didn't change it, he is corrupted. Otherwise, he is the best president we can get.
I would like him to leave without leaving a chaos behind him. That's what I want. So if they can reach a formula which can do that, I think it will be much better.
These are the people who drive Egypt's economy, who generate much of its wealth. As long as they're not telling President Mubarak to go immediately, he will hang on for as long as he can. Jackie Rowland, Al Jazeera, Cairo.
Thai and Cambodian troops have been involved in a fourth day of heavy fighting. The confrontation is happening in a disputed border area surrounding a 900-year-old mountaintop temple. Wayne Hay reports.
Living near the Thai-Cambodia border can come at a cost. In recent days, an ongoing land dispute has shattered the peace in this otherwise sleepy Thai settlement. The owner of this house told us she managed to evacuate before a Cambodian artillery shell landed at her back door. This was the scene the night before, dozens of Thai shells streaking across the sky towards Cambodia. Despite the aggression from both sides, the Thai Prime Minister called for a peaceful solution, but said his country will continue to defend itself.
When there is firing into Thai territory, it's necessary for Thailand to protect its sovereignty. We counter the attack and we return fire only at military targets.
However, Cambodian television showed footage of the ancient Preah Vihear temple in the middle of the disputed area, which they allege was damaged by shelling. In Thai territory, the soldiers remain on edge. At checkpoints, supplies are being rushed to the front line. The border villages are now largely deserted. People who have stayed behind say they're ready for more fighting. They've armed themselves and are preparing new bunkers to shelter in. Those who aren't digging in are being catered for in the relative safety of a nearby town. The residents who have fled the fighting have come here to evacuation centres. In this one alone, there are around 9,000 people. Most of them say they're in no mood to go home anytime soon.
I will continue to stay here until the fighting stops.
Given the tension on the border, these people may be here for some time yet. Wayne Hay, Al Jazeera, Kantaralak, Thailand.
Japan's Prime Minister Naoto Kan has called for Russia to return 4 islands claimed by both nations. Kan was speaking at a rally in Tokyo attended by hundreds of former Japanese residents of the island chain. They're known as the Northern Territories in Japan and the Southern Kurils in Russia. A court in the Netherlands has been hearing arguments which could define how a trial into the killing of former Lebanese Prime Minister Rafik Hariri could proceed. Let's go back to Barbara Sarah in London for more on that. Barbara.
Thanks, Folly. Well, lawyers and judges at a UN-backed tribunal are trying to thrash out the question of what exactly constitutes an act of terrorism. The special hearing is aiming to clarify laws that the court will apply when trying those allegedly responsible for the truck bomb that killed Rafik Hariri and 22 others in Beirut 6 years ago. From the Netherlands, Barnaby Phillips has more.
All rise. The Special Tribunal for Lebanon is now in session.
An important moment at the Special Tribunal for Lebanon as it moves from investigation into the courtroom.
Today's proceedings show that Lebanon, a proud founding member of the United Nations, is set on a course for judicial accountability through the rule of law.
It was a massive explosion that killed Rafik Hariri and many others, and Lebanon is still feeling the tremors of that blast. It's widely suspected the tribunal will indict members of Hezbollah, which is not only a powerful political movement, but also a military one. Its leader, Hassan